Okay, welcome to Stampscapes University. This will be the final touches, the final segment of this first batch of stamp sketches that we've been working through the grayscale toning and lighting process, coloring process, and then, with the last video, the sharp detail process of adding light kind of touches in a very sharp, precise manner using gel and paint pens of light into dark, okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to add that same type of light into dark, but we're going to use the opposite texture of this sharp application of little dots, okay? And that is going to be using a soft material, which are these cotton balls. You want to use 100% real cotton if you can. I don't find the acrylic ones to be very good. They seem to resist the ink. And just your white pigment ink, okay? Just your standard white pigment ink. Don't go with the Brilliance one because it dries a little bit too fast, and you want to be able to manipulate what you've already laid down. So kind of a slower drying, just standard white pigment ink will do the trick, okay? All right, so let's get to it here. I always blab too much in these videos. I apologize about that, But what we're going to do is, if you've retained some of the white in your scenes, that's where we're going to start off with, okay? In shadows, you work, from dark into the light. With lighting, you work light into dark, okay? So that's why I've had you retain some of the white areas of your card, even if it's a really small area. The point is you have to have a little bit of white in there, usually, for it to kind of blend and merge into the scene really well. Okay, so ink up your cotton balls. Pretty good. Get it pretty saturated, okay? Now, most of our white pigment inks, they're really loaded with ink, okay? But you want to kind of work it into there. You don't want it all on the surface. So here's the trick here. What you do is you kind of, well, you do, not kind of, but you blot a lot of it off. I should have a dark piece of paper so you can see how much is coming off of there. But I'll just have to go off feel here, okay? What I'm doing is I'm kind of blotting some of it off, but I'm also working some of it back into the cotton, and I'm spreading it out so that I don't have this sloppy mess. We don't want to put this big slathering of ink on here, okay? That's like the opposite of what you want to do. You want to do it where this is almost like applying like cold pack, kind of makeup on someone, on someone's face, for clown makeup or something like that. Not the thick makeup, but, think about it light, like you're putting it on a child's face, okay? Now, that being said, that's usually the kind of the example that I give of this. You don't want to just slather it down, okay? You want to just go with light touches right here, okay? Now, since there's very little on here, when I start applying it into the light areas, you're not going to be able to see it too much. But where this media and application style is really effective is when you move from the light areas into the dark or darker, okay? So watch this tree right here. See where the lighting is coming from right here? It's because it's the lightest thing in the scene, right? But see, as I tap this over this tree, see now the tree now, how it's partially illuminated because I put that little white pigment ink there. Don't go over all of it. Well, you could, but if you want it to look like it's kind of capturing some of that light, play around with partials. Now look at this little cabin right here. I think the cabin looks okay as is, but let's put a little bit of ink on it, okay? Now it's a little bit too much. See how I've kind of slathered it here. Now here's what's good about kind of a slow drying ink is I can remove some of it. So now look at that. There's just very little there, but look at that lighting and fog coming in there, okay? All right, let's just start applying it in the light areas. And let's see if you can see the difference as I do this, okay? See this little bit of white right here, or light. I'm putting a little bit of fog or mist right along that bank. This is the waterside bluffs right here. And I've left a little bit of white in there, kind of reflected in the water. But see this little softness right here? It's really capturing that light now. Now watch this tree right here. Putting a little bit on this. The more you work with your cotton ball, the better it gets until it gets, way too saturated. But that's a long time from now, okay? So keep just working with it. It feels better the more you do this, okay? Here's some light down here, but look at that area up there and that texture and lighting now. Doesn't it look cool? Okay, so this is one of my takes on scenes. I think this scene looked, it looked okay, just stamped out in black. You add the lighting into it, it looks a little bit better. Coloring, it looked good. Then you add these little highlights in here, and now it's starting to look a lot better. But then when you do this, I think it looks really great in certain areas, okay? It's because you give it the full potential in terms of lighting, but also from texture. When you add this kind of softer feel into certain areas, you don't want to do it over the whole scene because then there's no contrast. But look how effective this kind of misty kind of glow looks in this water. Okay? It puts that little fog and mist on the lake, on the surface of the water. Okay? So look at that. We've extended greatly the textural range of the piece. Doesn't it look kind of mystical and soft, and it looks like like a morning visual that we'd all love to see if we were kind of in this location. Okay, now in videos, in a lot of my videos, I refer to the space between, okay? You can kind of create this illusion of the space between and how it affects what we see things, okay? So, that being said, we can stamp lighter things in the distance, okay? And darker things in the foreground. That represents kind of moisture, something sediment in the air. And the light is reflecting and it's getting broken up through that sediment. Now this is something where we're actually looking like we're physically adding fog and things, and now we have, instead of just there's those trees right there and us right here as a viewer, we've put fog in between us, so that's the space in between us and that tree in the background. You want a tree to look more distant? Here, let's just do this. I'll put more pigment ink over it so it looks lighter, right? Now that tree looks farther off than this one right here, right? So we've physically put space in between there, and something's affecting those more distant images, okay? And I think that is really fun, and this is a really easy thing to do. And if you ever had too much, just take a paper towel and just wipe it off, and you can start all over again, Maybe you do one scene and you just play around with it, and you don't really worry about, kind of the end results because you're practicing. You can just do that. Like I said, you can wipe it all off and start over again, so you can have a test one. And that's the beauty of working with, these slow-drying pigment inks on glossy cardstock. Now, if you're doing it on matte cardstock, it sticks a little bit more and you can't really remove it. But that looks good too, okay? So you just have to be a little bit more decisive. That being said, when you do these scenes like this, they will dry darker than what that pigment ink looks like right now. So sometimes you have to kind of add a little bit more pigment ink than you think you'll need, or you just wait for this to dry and take a look at it, and then add more accordingly, okay? Alright, so I want to do some before and after photos. So I'm going to pause this video to take a picture of this piece with that application of pigment. Alright, next piece here. Now this is one where I've wiped off. It looks like I've already applied some of that pigment ink in there because I've wiped off some of the tree before I made the impressions to give me a head start on this lighting effect, okay? So we have our lighting coming from right within there. I'm going to grab some of my pigment ink, blot it off a little bit, and I'm going to reiterate what I did with that kind of wiping off process, and I'll make these areas in here look like they're even more illuminated with this white pigment ink. Okay, adding light into darkness. or into a darker area, or over a darker object, okay? It's kind of doing both. See this white, I'm coming up into this pink area a little bit in the sky, the background sky. Okay, look at that lighting coming through there. Doesn't it look more kind of luminous? And the lighting is now kind of enveloping those trees. So now you've added this element that seems to be kind of, again, in that space between us and the view, these objects. Now you have this illuminated moisture in the air, you know, supposed to represent fog, in between us. So it makes us kind of aware of the space. And therefore, you know, what this is all saying is, you know, these are all visual pieces, okay? But you have more than one sense, okay? So when you add this thing like fog in there, it creates kind of a visual kinesthetic nature because you have this moisture in the air. And things look more kinesthetic in that process, okay? You're enveloped in the light. You're aware of it, okay? Like on a high noon day that's really bright and sunny outside, you're not aware of all that stuff in the air around you, but you go out on a foggy day and you're aware of it. Or just simply around sunset when, you know, all that sediment in the air, the dust, the moisture, you know, in some areas the pollution or something like that is in the air and it illuminates gold. And that's why everyone likes sunsets, you know, it's a beautiful visual, but we feel kind of the space around us more. It's visual. You can see what's in the air and you're, you know, aware of yourself moving through something. You know, like if you're a diver, you know, underwater, you're definitely aware of that you're in some other type of element, you know, that's just not the absence of something, okay? And that's what, you know, sunsets and things like that, you know, are kind of nice for. It's that awareness of the space in between us and other things, you know, so you're kind of connected to it. Okay, so that is that. Oh, while we're here with this starry type of thing, element in the sky, not thing, you can also take a lot of this off, okay? And then I'm going to add it around a couple of these kind of larger stars to make them a little bit more glowing and rich. What happens is everyone adds way too much of that. Like I just added quite a bit myself. I really had to blot it off, okay? So just kind of be careful about what you add on there. If there's too much, watch this. I'm just going to, oops. I had some paint on my finger already. You can kind of just dab it off and dilute it a little bit, okay? So watch this one right here. See that? You just kind of remove some ink. It's on your finger now, you know, but you can remove it. Okay, let's move a little bit faster on here. I think you get the concept. Adding it into the lighter areas. Now this scene right here, I don't know, it's a little bit boring to me. But we can make quick work of it. That wasn't my correct cotton ball. Here it is right here. Okay, kind of adding it. And see that background right there? A little bit of that fog and mist. Let's put them in a little bit of fog and mist. This composition right here, in terms of the spirit of it, it looks a little bit kind of mysterious with these two people in here in this forest and certainly this color scheme. But now look at this. We've added this kind of misty kind of element to it. And I don't know, it kind of goes with the theme of the piece. Here, I'm adding a little bit more than, you know, I thought I would, but why not? I can see if I can kind of add some of that visual interest to the piece from a textural standpoint and lighting standpoint. Okay. Yeah, I need to go get some better cotton balls. These ones are really lousy. It's not really even, it's real small. I don't know, go buy them at like a Target or, you know, like your chain, you know, big name store. Okay. See that right there? Isn't that kind of fun? It definitely has a different kind of look to it in that area, though, doesn't it? It's like the mysterious forest. Oh, maybe those people are ghosts. But they're holding hands and they're going for a walk, you know? Maybe it's their forest. Okay, there we go. Look at that. That light. They're walking into the light, maybe. All right, moving on. Look at this one. Everything's very crisp, right? Looks okay, but let's take a look and see what this does. Right around the lighting of the moon, I like a real soft, kind of glowing moon. You can kind of add a corona or something like that, and that might be kind of interesting up there. Find some kind of round thing and put a little tone around it. Let's put a little bit of fog down here. Look at this. Old man and dog. What's the name of that stamp? Let's put a little bit of illumination down there. Go halfway up. See that? It looks kind of richer, doesn't it? It's done in a very, I don't know, it's a pretty subtle way. Let's put this cabin in a little bit of moonlit fog. Like that. See, I'm not putting it over everything. I'm just kind of doing it here and there. It's like you're a lighting director, and you got stage hands, and they got the fog machines and whatnot. And you're illuminating it just however you want it. What's your preference? Different spirit, though, isn't it? Like that. See that? Okay. Let's see. Can't really see it around the moon too much. Let's add a little bit more. You can't see it too much around the lighter areas because white on, a very light area is not going to show up, but you can go for that kind of textural contrast, though. Like right around there. Look at that lighting now. It's a soft light, which is moonlight, right? It's a real soft light. So isn't there kind of a different spirit in there? You can hear the crickets, maybe. All right. Look at this one with the chapel, okay? Where's the light in here? It's right here and right here, right? Down here. Let's see what it'll look like. I think this thing looks pretty good as is, but let's see if it'll look a little bit better with this. You don't have to add a lot of it. I mean, you might, on all your pieces, maybe spend, who knows, 15 seconds on one. But what a difference it could potentially make. See that right down there? Isn't that fun? So now it's certainly fun to apply. Now my cotton ball's getting a little better. It's easier to work with this. Kind of the more kind of beat up it kind of gets, it starts to work, you get familiar with the contours and whatnot, and it starts smashing down a little bit more. It seems like it goes on a little bit more evenly. Okay. Look at this lighting coming from behind the chapel, too. Like that, I kind of put it back in here. But see, it's also right here. So now you have this kind of enveloping, kind of beautiful glowing fog and mist. Let's put a little bit more in front here. See what I do? I oscillate. I put some down here, but I don't put it over the whole thing so that it stands out by textural contrast, okay? A little bit more in these clouds above there. All right, that is really fun stuff right there. All right, let's see. Look at this one. Definitely a perfect spot for some fog right here and maybe around the sailboat a little bit. Around the moon. Look at that moon start to glow already. Or the moonlight, I guess I should say. And where does it show up that it's glowing? It's on the images around that light source. The light area, so it's where light meets dark. Okay? Alright. Sometimes this isn't so good. You know, the Q-tip, the cotton swab, works a little bit better for detailed areas. We'll try to use this one. Kind of folding it over, kind of real narrow. If it's easier for you to access something upside down, try turning your piece upside down, and turn it upside down. Okay, putting it on these little waves, the spindrift coming off the top of the wave, the crest of the wave. Let's put that sailboat in a little bit of that illumination. How about the front of it, where it's closer to that light? You know, the light reflected on the surface of the ocean. That's Seaside Cove. Right here, it's not a stamp about like this big, but we just use the center portion of it. But look at this passage of kind of illumination and fog. Look at that sailboat right there. Isn't that nice just to put a little dab in the front like that? A little bit of fog in the front, and look at these waves. Don't they look like there's a soft kind of illumination in the air? Okay, so we have this nice textural addition now to these pieces. All right, let's see. Right here, yeah, emerald green looking scene. I won't do too much to this one. Although it could use a little bit of help. There's no focal point or anything in this one. Maybe this one can use the most. I don't know, because it's kind of boring. I need some other imagery in this one. I think this one I just wanted to show that kind of emerald green colored scheme. I love that color scheme and like real jeweled looking greens and deep greens and bright, you know, yellow greens. The Emerald Corridor. I just stamped something out there in the distance, maybe. Okay. All right. A little bit too much, but it'll dry. Okay, so see that those trees look different, right? They were all stamped the same color, but now you've given them variety by putting something like that on top. Alright, this one right here, everything's in pretty sharp focus. But let's really try to add to this piece. Look at that right there. Look at that lighting right there. I mean, doesn't that change a lot about this rock right here? It was stamped out. That rock was the same exact as this one over here, but now look at it. You can give yourself so much variety just by doing something like this. We buy every pen out there, okay? This, you know, and that's fun stuff. Every pad, of every line. But you can expand. I don't know why more people don't do this. You can expand every single one of your pen colors. This one was colored with a lot of alcohol markers, pen colors, ink pads. You can expand the potential of every one of those types of mediums by applying something over the top of it. So you can have a lighter version of it, a softer version of it, a duller version of it, etc. You don't have to always use things just as is. You know, you can go in and you can overlap and mix, but something like this, from a textural standpoint, it's unbelievable what you can do. And it's the easiest thing to creating a rich variety to a given piece. I mean, this piece was so uniformly, composed and kind of rendered with color. But now, look at the difference between this area right in here and this area over here. It's completely different from a textural standpoint and lighting, but it's all the same image though. But look at that variety in here. Not only that of the black, but it's of all the blues that have been placed down here. It was all this color everywhere. Now you have this color, but also this version of it right over here. Okay, you want to push back the background a little bit, those rocks back there. Then you can just kind of lighten them up like this. And when you put a little bit of a lighter tone over something in the background, it pushes it back in visually by doing so. There you have it. Look at this place, especially right in here. And look at that. The highlights down here now. It's a different spirit, I believe. Alright, now on this one right here, I don't think I'm going to do too much. It is so dark, I didn't leave any white, right? Let's see if I can add a little touch of it. I don't know. If I mask some of it off, the Q-tip would be kind of a more appropriate applicator here, because if I want to go detailed, right? So let's see here. Sometimes I remove as much ink as I apply. And sometimes it's just too much. Actually, this is looking really good. So you can go apply it very lightly so that the color kind of underneath shows through, so it's never really white. But look at that texture right there, down there. Those waves. Isn't it kind of like, it's almost like a time exposure of a few, a couple seconds, or 30th of a second or whatever, in photography. But look at that softness right there. Okay, let me see if I can kind of enhance this. It's kind of creating a little bit of a pattern like this. All right, this is the one where I thought it would be kind of a useless endeavor, but I think this is my favorite one so far. Isn't it, when you add something like that down there, isn't there a kind of a quiet softness to it? That, I don't know, that look it conveys, everything isn't so sharp. So if you have kind of this mist in the air, it would change kind of the sound, when you're in kind of, in thick fog. It's not only lighting, but sound kind of gets a little bit diffused and muted. Okay, so this is a little bit back in those trees. See, I'm kind of changing it right around those trees, so lighting is kind of hitting them, but look at that down there. Okay. This isn't supposed to... Okay, this is a similar type of situation here. I don't know if it'll look as good as that last one. This one's like really pinkish. You can add a little bit of it. It looks kind of weird if you do it on one thing. Like, if it's on one wave, it would have to go on a few of them, to be consistent. Otherwise, it's going to look kind of out of place. So you have to kind of do it on a few of them and see if you like it. Don't kind of add it in one area and say, oh my god, that looks weird, because it's the only texture in a certain area. So you have to kind of unify things with, common textures. So I think that looks okay. I like that on the other one a little bit better. But look at this in here. See this real crisp impression? Let's vary that some. Let's put a little bit of backlighting on here. How's that? So see where I'm not using a lot of this. Use, more delicate applicator like that. But see that right in there? And then you kind of pull out. It's, it's not quite as obvious. But again, see, I didn't save any of the white of the paper here, so I don't want to use too much of this because it kind of looks weird because you have white lighting, white pigment ink, hitting an area where there's yellow lighting in there. Maybe, I don't know, maybe you use yellow pigment ink. I haven't really tried that. All right, let's go back to this big ball. Okay. Where's the lighting? Here, right? Kind of. A little bit back up in here. This scene right here, to me, is kind of... It's one of those situations that... I mean, it looks okay, but it just... There's nothing kind of remarkable about it. But you add this in here, and I wouldn't say, oh my gosh, it's amazing or something like that, but you really kind of expand on kind of the existing kind of visual language of the piece. You have, darks and lights. You have different colors, hues, and whatnot, different versions of kind of green. Textural standpoint, you have the crisp elements in there with little wildflowers and stuff like that. But this, to me, really is making kind of a bigger statement like that. It's kind of weird. It's a bigger statement in a very subtle way because it's a very soft application, but we're very aware of it, though. Watch this tree right back here. I'll kind of make those ones a little bit lighter. So suddenly, doesn't that background area look a little bit more interesting? Like that. See that area back there? Look at that. And here's that little fog. It looks like this thing's out of focus, but no, that's the pigment ink like that, see? This tree right here. It looks okay, but let's put a little bit of fog and mist at the base of it. Like this, or, I don't know, around it. Something like that. Yeah, those trees like that. Yeah, okay, a little bit more. I'll put it on part of the, the right side of this tree, right there. So, I don't know. I think this looks more interesting now. There's more variety. Textural variety, lighting, distance, everything. Those trees in the background were just stamped out black. Just the same as these ones in the foreground. But now, look at the difference those ones have in the background. And don't they convey a more distant object now? Before they were brought up visually. Now they were smaller, so they, represent, distance too. But now they're also lighter, so they look even more distant. Yeah, that's my favorite part right back in there, I think. Let's put a little bit of fog right at the base of these pine trees, maybe. See this right here? See that? Yeah, it's a little bit too much, huh? Here. Okay, that's a little bit better, right? Like that. Low-line fog, so a little bit pigment ink, and then transition it where there's kind of none up top there. All right. Moving along. This one was a real fun one. Not too much white in here, right? But let's take a look at this area in the distance here. More distant trees, right? Distant trees could be a little bit lighter trees. Softer, whatever. Okay. Something like that. Let's look at it at a distance. It's a little bit different. This one's, again, it's not, I didn't leave a lot of white in here, if any. So this kind of stands out a little bit, but it'll kind of blend in with there a little bit more as it dries, so it won't be so white. All right? This one's a fun one. You say, well, where are you going to put it in here? Well, on the clouds. Clouds are really soft and billowy, and they're made of moisture, right? So you can illuminate those clouds. Now, they're pretty light, so this won't show up too much, but let's see if we can kind of change it a little bit from a textural standpoint by adding that white and moving it into some of these darker areas. Not too much, though. I mean, it's already, kind of, we made a statement with our coloring process, but kind of add it in here, and now it isn't that. I'll do it on the center one here. Doesn't that cloud right here look different from this one and this one? It's really soft and light and billowy, even though it's been stamped in the darkest color possible, which is black, right? So look at how beautiful and illuminated and kind of just overall misty you can make that look with some of this pigment ink. Okay, now let's do the same thing with these two, ones on the side. Kind of light applications, right? See, I can be pretty liberal with this one because I've left, a good decent amount of light. Now look how soft that looks. Now look how hard that looks in terms of contrast. I think that looked okay before, but doesn't that look better? Okay, let's go right here. All right, look at those billowy soft clouds, huh? Very illuminated and made of vapor. This one right here, look at this one, how different it looks from those now. This one's kind of the bottom side of the clouds. I forget how, I think I was thinking a different way to, I was thinking this is up and down right here, but I think I was looking at it like that, and I thought, or one of these, I thought maybe that looked more interesting. Okay, let's hit this one right here, though. Quite a change, though, isn't it? I mean, this isn't a big process or anything like that. It's, I don't know, spending 2 more minutes on your scene. And look at that illumination right there. And look how soft and billowy those clouds are. Now, quite a contrast change. And, like I said, it's always so much fun. Now look at this one. Next to that one. I think these clouds, and like I said, again, these look okay, but I think that looks more realistic. And just, I don't know, it's more dreamy looking, I guess, when you add that in there. And again, it kind of goes back to that space in between, it's, the edge of a cloud. If you were to fly in there with, from an airplane, you wouldn't see it coming, up to you, and you're not just going to go up to a cloud and it's going to be like right there and solid. You won't even be able to tell it. Things just become more diffused and light, and then you're inside a cloud, and it just looks like fog or something like that when you're inside of it. So again, it's that kind of diffusion of space. The farther you get away from that cloud, that moisture starts to dissipate a little bit, and that's what this is doing. It's kind of creating these layers that look like, they're closer to us now. All right. Okay, now look at that illumination and clouds in the background, right? But let's look at this foreground right here. I mean, that looks okay, right? But let's bring that same texture right around this low line fog or mist, and let's bring that into the water as well. You know, where the water meets, you know, some land right there. But look at that fog now, right down here. Doesn't it look like there's just this little subtle illumination between us and the cabin? Now I'm adding more of it because I really like that, but look at that. Okay, you can add it up by the trees too. You can put a little bit of illumination on some of those trees because there is a lighter background in there. You know, almost white. So we can kind of change some of these tree limbs where they look a little bit different so you get a little bit more variety right in that type of area, like that. All right. All right. This one's right here is the those clouds again. Look at this one. I'll try to be fast on this. There's a ton of clouds on here, so. And it's fairly light, so I can, you know, I can put quite a bit of ink on here, and I won't dab it off. Okay, I'll just start it in this lighter area right in here. This would be a pretty good example of where we can do those light beams like I've done in other scenes. But we'll do that in another video. Okay, so I'll put it around right in here. But do you notice how gets a little bit darker right here? And then the light starts again right here? So you could put it in right here, taper it off, and then start it again in this lighter area, this next band of lighting. Okay, so I like to oscillate my lighting. Light, dark, light, dark, light, dark. So we're also applying this in those lighter areas, and then we'll just transition it a little bit into those darker areas. Alright, look at that illumination now. Don't you feel the lighting more visually? Not kinesthetically, but I don't know, just visually doesn't it look a little bit, I don't know, three-dimensional maybe too. I love doing it with waterfalls. Where do you put it? Usually at the base of the waterfall like that. Churning waters, the mist and action of the, you know, the water and the spray, and I don't know, I love adding it down like that. I'll even kind of obscure some of these rocks back in here. Make them a little bit softer. Like about like so. I've drawn these images where, designed them specifically where you can do this type of thing to really enhance certain areas. So my transitions of certain areas within this, I've kind of done it with the idea of, you know, someone doing this. I want to draw it. I've drawn them where it looks fine without it, but you know, you add it in there and it just can really make an area so much more visually interesting. Okay, let's add it down here. Here's some light right in here. Remember how it kind of added around that rock on that lakeside reflections lake scene. Now we can do the same thing here. We can have some lighting kind of enveloping certain areas of objects, meaning mostly in the lighter areas, okay? Same thing around these reeds right here. You can put them in light so that they're not all just black right in here, okay? Let's do the same thing up here. Let's vary those reeds a little bit. Those reeds get a little bit monotonous in terms of all being just stamped in black, so... Alright, I'm going white paint white pigment ain't crazy here, but look at that illumination now. Isn't there a nice kind of passageway of light? We've left it, we've retained the lightness by just not coloring it in, like down here, but then we've emphasized it a little bit more with some additional white pigmenting, so passageway of light kind of going through there like that. All right. Okay, let's see here. Black and white, monochromatics. Where are you going to add it in here? There's not a lot of, super definitive dark areas in here, but let's go ahead and add it down here around these rocks. Ooh, that made a big difference, actually. See that right there? Because it really stands out because these rocks right here are really sharp and dark, okay? So let's maybe add some in here to contrast to these sharp rocks. See splashing waves, just like waterfalls, right? You can kind of, add that mist and spray of the ocean, Everything's just wet out there. Overcast. I grew up in this area where there was a lot of coastline, but it was always, pretty decent sized waves out there, and weather was always overcast, and you always kind of felt damp when you were out there. This is on the central coast of California, right on this point in Vandenberg Air Force Base. I mean, seeing the sun out there was really rare. It's always overcast in that area, at least at the beach. All right, so quite a bit of textural changes in here, right? You want to do it on the boat too? Let's do it on a little bit of the boat. Let's illuminate a little bit. See that right there? It's just kind of catching some of that light. Looks more three-dimensional though, doesn't it? Okay, here we go. Sun right down here, and the reflection. Why don't we add a little bit of this white right around our source of light? And add some up into the chapel area. Background trees, right? Black, black. We'll kind of just mute that out a little bit, like that. Doesn't that look farther away, more distant? How simple is that? You didn't even have to use a gray ink. You just make it lighter. Kind of in post-production, post-stamping. I got illumination right in there, huh? All right. That's going a little bit extreme right there, but I think I like it. That illumination, that light coming through the trees like that. All right. Oh, here's just a pretty simple one. Look at this. Kind of foreground, midground, background, right? Well, let's change that a little bit. Or let's emphasize that. More distant. And a little bit closer. And then we can have this down here, some fog or mist right around this area. At the base of the trees. All right, so that is that. Now, one of the things I thought I was going to do in the last video, but I didn't have time, and now we spent a lot of time on this one, but let's see if we can add a little bit of foreground to these. Okay, I won't add too much, but let's see. Well, some of these, I don't know. Some of these just don't need it. I think that looks pretty cool as is, but I'll tell you what. Let's just go on here and just keep it simple. I'm going to use my leaves stamp right here with VersaFine Black. Now, I'm stamping this last because the VersaFine can take it. It's a pigment ink, and it can stamp over the white and still be fairly dark. Okay, I think I like this scene like this. Wait, which way was it? Is it that way, or... That way kind of looks interesting, too. Let's get it like that. Let's put some trees. One's right here. Sometimes having something really crisp next to something really soft makes for a great textural addition to a piece. Okay, something like that. Even some birds in there would look really fantastic. Nighthawk or something. All right. Let's see. Yeah. Oh, this one right here could use it, I think. Kind of an overhanging tree limb. We'll put some right in front of that moon. Look how make it. We're putting it over some of that moon, but doesn't it make that moon stand out so much more by having something dark right next to it, even though it's kind of covering it in a little ways. Look at that. Kind of frames it off, doesn't it? And we'll keep the ocean one just as is. Now this one right here, we have the Marvy Black in there, but it's so full, but why don't we take it a step further with some additional really dark impressions. Textures, look at that. Doesn't it push back those characters in there by having something so dark in there? And dark and crisp against something that's soft and light. I always like playing with textural contrasts in my pieces. I think it really just, it plays off each other, you know. I'm talking about like checkerboarding things and going dark, light, dark, light. Well, this is kind of soft, crisp. And it's, you know, and it's dark light there too, but look at that. Kind of frames things off and brings, you know, your viewer's attention more kind of inward towards those characters. Okay, this one right here can certainly use a little bit of help, I would say. Still, just from a structural standpoint, everything's kind of loose in this. It's open. So let's close it off a little bit, you know, by having some foreground elements in it. This kind of puts us as a viewer like standing underneath a tree or something like that sort. I think it'll bring more kind of attention to that cabin as well, right? I don't know about you, but that cabin was kind of lonely looking, but now it feels more kind of comforted, like the plants and things are, you know, surrounding it and cradling it or whatever. This one has the oak branch up there. Okay, let me I can use the same oak branch, but I don't want to pull that out at this point in time in this video. Let's just use this one. Let's go for a little bit of darker kind of a element in there, playing against, you know, the lighter black, I guess. I always thought Marvy black was really black until I kind of contrasted it against the VersaVine black. It's like, oh, that's what black is. But look at that layering up there. All right, I think that should, well, every time I say that in these videos, it's like, okay. You know, something else could use a little bit of a, you know, kick of, you know, some other element, maybe. Yeah, I don't know if that one worked so much. It's like the overgrown kind of, you know, world, you know, from neglect. Okay, I don't want to go overkill on that one. I'm not going to do that one. Okay, here. All right, this one, here's another chap. I'll do this one better. It's kind of rushing that last one. Let's do this. I like to cap off things. I mean, you can have these leaves or something like that coming from the bottom, too. Actually, that'd be good. But, okay, look at that. So it kind of caps off the top, right? Isn't that a great contrast there against those lighter trees in the distance? Let's see. Okay, I happen to have this right here, so let's use these reeds. Okay. How's that look? I don't know, doesn't it look more complete to you now? It does to me. Here's this one right here. We have these dark reeds down here, but let's stagger this a little bit more with some even darker ones, okay? Just when you thought you were done with the reeds in that scene, look how much more depth those ones bring to it. So you have, you know, lighter blacks and darker blacks and grays in there. Okay. And it looks just deeper right there. A deeper visual space we're working with. Now, when we spray these things, everything's going to get a little bit darker. So the contrast between the VersaVine and the Marvy black won't be quite as extreme as it is right now, unless you don't spray it, but I'd always recommend spraying your pieces. I think it just makes them look a little bit more deep and interesting in terms of just the overall saturation of the piece. All right. This one's a really textural. Crazy piece, textural craze. Okay. And here, I like that kind of, those reeds up there, but let's see what we can do here with these ones down below. See, I change the angle and height of it that I stamp it. Just to go for a little bit more variety. Okay. All right. Kind of frames it off a little bit. I did put those reeds as if it's growing right on that road, but well, I think it kind of frames it And just, I don't know, it completes it a little bit more. To my eye, at least. Good boy, we do have a ton of scenes that we did here. I've never done quite this assembly line type of process with so many scenes here, you know, in these lessons, but we had quite a few stamp sketches here to work through. All right, so see that. All right, so anyway, I think that is it. I'm going to start laying these out here. I'm going to think, oh my gosh, that needs a little bit of something. I'm trying to resist doing that. I'll do it off camera here. But anyways, what do we have here? We have light, soft, and dark crisp, right? When we're doing impressions with this. So these are kind of going for the polar extreme opposites of applications right here, but they contrast and harmonize beautifully in terms of a you know, a finished piece. You know, those soft, you know, diffused moonlight lighting, you know, contrasted against this real crisp element like that. It really pushes depth and texture within a piece, and certainly contrast in terms of value. So much fun to do. And it's easy to do too. Just, you know, I mean, what happens is everyone, when they first try this, they add too much ink because they're pigment ink pads. You know, a lot of our pigment ink pads are just super juicy. We don't use them like we do, you know, dye ink pads, you know. So a lot of times people just go on there and it's a big blob. And then they go, oh my God, you know, it kind of shell shocks them into, you know, not attempting it anymore. But you get the feel of it. Even I did in working through these pieces here. That cotton ball kind of needed to get worked in a little bit. You know, it was getting a little blobby and I didn't know where. Sometimes I'd be applying it like this and I didn't know, you know, there was a little bit more ink up here and less down here, so I'd go like that, and you know, it just wasn't applying exactly where I wanted it to go. But I got the feel of it. I mean, one cotton ball was used on every one of these scenes in here, so you can use this again too if you want to. So, I don't know. It's just a process of kind of getting the feel of it and applying the amount that you want. Okay, so it's always kind of working kind of in a, you know, a dry brush effect, a little at a time. But sometimes when people go like dab and they can't see anything at all, they press hard on the next one, and it's like a big blob. Okay, so you just kind of lightly dab it on, like you're dabbing on like a really delicate amount of you know, makeup to, you know, an eye or something like that. I don't know. I'm just speculating that's what, you know, people that use makeup do. I don't. But just a little at a time, and you'll get the right application, okay? It's almost like we have to tap something about 20 times, and I did in some of these areas like this. You know, it takes a half a minute or something like that, or 15 seconds. It's so little time, but when you do it, you can get the exact amount on there that you want. And if you go overboard, you can always just blot it off, and it comes right off. So it's super forgiving. Look at this little bit in here again. So we can take a look, and it's like that little soft little, you know, touches and elements within a piece. And in stamped imagery, we're always going for crisp imagery like that, okay? But everything is always so stark and sharp in stamping that we don't always achieve kind of those softer looks. And that's this whole area of texture and lighting that we kind of, it's underrepresented in stamping because we're always going for something crisp, you know. But just with a little touch like that, it can add just so much into a piece in terms of the kind of the visual range of a piece. And again, in terms of texture and lighting, okay? And again, those things look great against the opposite, you know, extremes of something really sharp and crisp like that. So you kind of leave these two types of things towards the end, you know, in terms of pigment inks. You leave your white pigment ink kind of towards the end, and then the black pigment ink if you're using a VersaFine or something of that sort to stamp, you know, those really super crisp images in. Like a scene like this, too. It'd be kind of fun if you take that same stamp and now you stamp it in that dark black pigment ink in here in the foreground. Wouldn't that look really interesting? And maybe I'll do that, or I don't know. I'll show it in the Facebook post or something like that. Okay, so anyways, I hope you enjoyed kind of adding your finishing touches onto your pieces. Drop me a note in the comment section if you have any comments or difficulties with that, but for the most part, you just want to remove quite a bit of ink off of your applicators before you start applying it, and apply with a really light touch and just take your time. Now, if it's just you took off way too much before you started applying it, then, get a feel for it. You have to get a feel for how much ink your pigment ink pad has at any given time. So, and areas of the pad too. Sometimes the center of the pad of mine are really super dry because that's where I've been using it all the time, but sometimes it's a lot wetter around the edges. Get a feel for it. And that's what it is. It's about getting a feel for it to add that kind of kinesthetic looking spirit into a piece, It's not really kinesthetic because we're not touching it, but it just feels different, when you have that, kind of element in that. You can almost feel the mist, as they might say, or spray, or, waterfall mist or whatnot. Okay, so anyways, thanks so much again for watching, and until the next Stampscapes U video.